No. Hey, Mo. Hey, get in there. Chrisean, get in there. Chrisean, get in there. Get in there. Hey, Mo, what you telling me?
Anyone of you touch my home?
Oh, shit. Mo.
If you blinked, you missed the combi for the explosion because this wasn't a breakup. It was a controlled detonation that went completely off script. 1 second the timeline was quiet. Too quiet. The next second, Chrisean snapped the emergency glass and hit the button labeled "I'm done." And when she said it, it didn't sound emotional. It sounded final. The kind of final that makes group chats freeze, blood scramble, and the lawyers suddenly pretend their phones are on silent. This wasn't tea being spilled. This was a full bathtub flip. Water everywhere, floors ruined, and nobody grabbing a towel. The drama didn't just escalate, it teleported straight to chaos, dragging Compton into the spotlight like it owed her money. Blueface didn't just get called out. He got aired out, marinated, and served with side commentary. No filter. No mercy. And here's the wild part. This didn't feel impulsive. It felt loaded. Like something she'd been holding back while the internet played dumb. If reality TV had a warning label, this would be the episode they'd pull from the archives. Because what you're about to hear makes celebrity breakups look scripted and peaceful. Stay locked in. Because once this door opened, there was no closing it. The moment Chrisean finally spoke, it felt less like a statement and more like a pressure valve exploding. Not emotional rambling, not confusion. This was calculated exhaustion mixed with rage that had been fermenting way too long. The tone alone told people this wasn't another episode. This was a season finale energy moment. For months, the internet had been playing detective with blurry clues and half-truths. Fans argued, blogs speculated, and everybody picked sides like it was a sport. But behind the scenes, the situation wasn't messy. It was toxic on a schedule. And when someone finally gets tired of surviving chaos, they don't whisper. They scorch the earth. Chrisean didn't wake up and choose peace. She woke up and chose clarity with receipts. The kind of clarity that doesn't ask for understanding. It demands attention. Her words didn't feel reactive. They felt overdue, like a countdown finally hit 0. And once she started talking, the internet realized it had been wrong about almost everything. This wasn't just about a relationship imploding. This was about control, humiliation, and a cycle that kept resetting every time people thought it was done. The pattern was familiar, but the ending never stuck. Until now. And that's what made this moment different from all the others. Blueface wasn't framed as a villain in a dramatic movie sense. He was painted as something worse, predictable, calculated, comfortable in chaos because chaos keeps attention flowing. And Chrisean made it painfully clear she was tired of being the storyline while someone else played producer. The background to this mess wasn't built overnight. It was layers of public embarrassment disguised as jokes. Private disrespect dressed up as entertainment. Arguments turned into content, and content turned into currency. At some point, the line between real pain and viral moments completely disappeared. People love to say, just leave like it's a button you press once. But when your life is intertwined with cameras, contracts, and constant commentary, leaving becomes a public event. Every step gets analyzed. Every silence gets misinterpreted. And every attempt at peace becomes another headline. The so-called leak didn't come from a hacker or a shady insider. It came from exhaustion slipping through honesty. A few words here, a reaction there. And suddenly the internet pieced together what had been hidden in plain sight the whole time. When the first reactions hit, they didn't trickle in, they flooded. Fans who once defended Blueface went quiet. Others doubled down, blaming Chrisean like accountability was optional. And the blogs did what they always do, slapped dramatic headlines on emotional wreckage and called it updates. But the sarcasm in Chrisean's tone cut deeper than any insult. She wasn't begging to be believed. She wasn't trying to convince anyone she was right. She sounded like someone who already made peace with being misunderstood and decided truth mattered more than approval. The wildest part wasn't what she said. It was what she didn't deny. She didn't clean it up. She didn't soften the edges. She let the mess stand exactly as it was, daring anyone to pretend it wasn't real. And that honesty hit harder than any scripted rant ever could. Compton suddenly became more than a backdrop. It turned into a symbol of where this chaos kept circling back to. Old habits, old power dynamics, old games dressed up as loyalty. And Chrisean made it clear she was done playing the role assigned to her. Blueface's silence didn't help. It never does. Silence in these moments doesn't read as maturity, it reads as strategy. And the internet knows the difference. People started questioning everything, from old clips to past statements, like rewinding a crime documentary looking for missed clues. What really fueled the tension was how familiar the cycle felt. Public fallout, temporary quiet, then a comeback attempt wrapped in deflection. Fans had seen this movie before, and nobody liked the ending. That's why this time, the reactions felt sharper and less forgiving. Chrisean wasn't positioning herself as a victim. She positioned herself as someone stepping out of a burning building without looking back. No dramatic pause. No maybe someday. Just a hard stop that felt uncomfortable because it was final. And finality scares people who profit from uncertainty. The sarcasm she used wasn't playful. It was surgical. Every line felt like it was aimed at a specific memory, a specific moment people weren't supposed to notice. She wasn't exposing secrets. She was exposing patterns. And patterns are harder to deny because receipts live in repetition. By the end of her statement, the internet wasn't debating what happened. They were debating how long this had been happening without consequences. That's when you know the narrative shifted. When the question changes from "is she exaggerating" to "why did everyone let this slide?" This wasn't a tantrum. This was someone clocking out of chaos permanently. And when someone leaves a situation like that, they don't tiptoe. They slam the door so hard it rattles every storyline built on their silence. And just like that, what people thought was another messy episode turned into a reckoning that nobody saw coming. Once the dust from that first explosion settled, the real chaos didn't cool down, it mutated. This is where the story stopped being about two people and started feeling like a social experiment gone wrong. Because the internet doesn't watch drama, it feeds it, studies it, remixes it, and then sends it back louder. And once the reactions kicked in, there was no putting this fire back in the ring light. Celebrity timelines lit up like a blackout, city finally getting power back. Some people dropped subtle emojis. Others chose silence so loud it practically screamed. PR team said no. And then there were the reckless ones, the ones who added gasoline disguised as jokes and just asking questions. Suddenly, this wasn't just personal business anymore. It became a digital coliseum with everyone picking a side. Memes arrived faster than accountability ever does. Screenshots were cropped, captions were written, and moments taken out of context like it was an Olympic sport. One clip painted Chrisean as fed up and fearless. Another twisted the narrative into something uglier, colder, and conveniently incomplete. Because nothing gets distorted faster than truth once it goes viral. The comparisons started flying immediately. People joked that this drama made love and hip-hop look like a documentary about nature walks. Others said it felt like a reality show where the producers lost control and the cast started writing their own scripts. Someone even compared it to a season finale cliffhanger that accidentally dropped mid-season. And honestly, none of those felt exaggerated enough. What pushed this situation into overdrive was how familiar it all felt. The internet has watched this dynamic unfold before, just with different faces and hashtags. Public humiliation disguised as humor, toxic loyalty marketed as passion, and chaos constantly reframed as that's just how they are. Blueface's response, or lack of one, became a character of its own. Every hour without a statement added another layer of speculation. Some people called it maturity. Others called it manipulation with a Wi-Fi connection. But silence in moments like this doesn't calm storms, it sharpens them. Then came the hot takes pretending to be concerned. People suddenly turned into relationship experts with zero qualifications and maximum confidence. They blamed timing. They blamed emotions. They blamed fame. Anything except the pattern that had been playing out in 4K for years. The wildest reactions came from those who tried to downplay it, calling it just another argument like arguments normally trend for days straight. Like emotional exhaustion casually explodes online for entertainment value. Like people say I'm done this loudly when they're planning to come back quietly. That minimization only made the backlash louder. Pop culture comparisons kept getting wilder as the hours passed. Some said it felt like a toxic reboot nobody asked for. Others compared it to watching someone finally unplug a machine that had been draining them slowly. A few even joked that this drama deserved its own warning label. Because at this point, spectators weren't entertained, they were invested. Public outrage didn't come in one wave. It came in phases. First shock, then humor, then anger, and finally, that uncomfortable realization that this wasn't funny anymore. People started revisiting old clips with new eyes. Moments once laughed off suddenly looked darker. Jokes felt sharper. Power dynamics felt uglier. And suddenly, the narrative wasn't about who said what, it was about why it kept happening unchecked. The sarcasm floating through the commentary wasn't lighthearted anymore. It turned cutting, almost bitter. People weren't just clowning, they were calling things out. And once public opinion shifts from jokes to judgment, there's no undo button. That's when reputations start sweating. Blueface's name stopped trending for music and started trending for context. That's never a good sign. Because when people aren't asking what's next, but instead asking how long has this been going on, the ground starts cracking. Every past interview, every post, every just kidding moment came back under a microscope. And microscopes don't care about excuses. Meanwhile, Chrisean's energy didn't soften. She didn't walk anything back. She didn't repackage her words to make them easier to swallow. That consistency confused people who expected a backtrack. Because we're used to apologies, not boundaries, the internet doesn't know what to do with someone who refuses to spin the narrative. No dramatic crying video. No sudden clarity thread explaining what I meant. Just a firm stance that said, I said what I said. And I meant it. That unsettled a lot of spectators. This was the point where the drama stopped being reactive and started becoming reflective. People began questioning why chaos like this is rewarded. Why humiliation is labeled content. Why disrespect gets defended as personality. And why it always takes a public meltdown for anyone to take accountability seriously. The outrage wasn't clean. It was messy, contradictory, and loud. Some defended, some condemned, some joked to avoid picking sides. But nobody could pretend it didn't matter anymore. That era ended the moment the words "I'm done" hit with finality. By now, this wasn't just trending, it was echoing. Across platforms, across fandoms, across conversations that had nothing to do with celebrity gossip. Because once people recognize a pattern, they start seeing it everywhere. And that's when this story stopped being just drama. It turned into a mirror. A loud and comfortable reflection of how chaos gets normalized until someone finally refuses to play along. And the scariest part, this was still only the middle of the fallout. By the time the noise finally started to thin out, the damage was already locked in. Not the dramatic kind that fades after a few days, but the slow-burning kind that follows people around quietly. This wasn't about trending anymore. This was about after effects, the kind that don't care how good your PR team is. Reputations don't collapse all at once. They crack, then fracture, then slowly start leaking trust. And this situation left hairline fractures everywhere. People weren't just reacting, they were reevaluating everything they thought they knew. That kind of shift doesn't reverse easily. For Blueface, the consequences didn't come with sirens. They came with silence, distance, and a noticeable change in tone from people who once laughed things off. Support stopped sounding automatic. Defenses started feeling conditional. And when conditional loyalty replaces blind fandom, the clock starts ticking. Chrisean's public image shifted in a way nobody predicted. Not into perfection. Not into sainthood, but into something more dangerous, clarity. She stopped being viewed as unpredictable and started being seen as someone who finally drew a line. That shift rattled a lot of narratives, because chaos is easier to dismiss than intention. Mess is easier to mock than resolve. And once resolve enters the picture, the jokes lose their edge. People don't know how to clown boundaries. Relationships around them didn't escape untouched. Associates became careful with words. Friends stopped playing mediator. And anyone previously benefiting from the drama suddenly had to decide if they were involved or just entertained. Neutrality got uncomfortable real fast. The public perception didn't flip overnight, but it hardened. There was less patience for excuses, less tolerance for deflection, and far more skepticism toward narratives that once slid by without resistance. That kind of skepticism lingers long after the hashtags disappear. What made this fallout different was the lack of cleanup. No soft focus interview, no sympathetic redemption arc teased at the end of the week. Just consequences sitting in the open, unpolished and unresolved. That unsettled people used to fast closures. The industry took notes, even if they pretended not to. Because when chaos stops being profitable, it stops being protected. And when an audience starts recognizing manipulation instead of applauding it, the power dynamic shifts. Quietly, but permanently, Chrisean didn't chase sympathy. She didn't try to reclaim likability. She didn't water herself down to be digestible. That refusal confused critics and supporters alike. Because we're trained to expect emotional labor after public fallout. Instead, she chose absence over explanation, distance over debate. And in a culture obsessed with access, that choice felt radical. You can't argue with someone who's no longer trying to convince you. And that's what made her silence louder than any rant. Blueface, on the other hand, couldn't outrun the questions. They followed him into every mention, every clip, every reference. The narrative stuck because it wasn't dramatic, it was familiar. And familiarity is harder to shake than scandal. What once felt like entertainment now felt like a cautionary tale. Not because it was shocking, but because it was predictable. People could map the pattern without needing updates. And when the audience gets ahead of the storyline, the magic is gone. This situation also changed how people talked about future interactions. Speculation shifted from will they reconcile to should they ever be in the same space again. That's not curiosity, that's concern. And concern kills the appetite for chaos real quick. The long-term impact won't be measured in likes or views. It'll show up in opportunities that quietly don't come back. Invites that stop arriving. Collaborations that suddenly feel complicated. Those are the consequences nobody tweets about. What's left now is an uneasy pause. Not resolution. Not closure. Just space where chaos used to live. And empty space is uncomfortable for people who thrive on noise. The story didn't end with forgiveness or reconciliation. It ended with a refusal to continue the cycle. That's not cinematic. That's not flashy. But it's disruptive in a way drama rarely is. And here's the part nobody wants to admit. This won't be the last time this kind of situation plays out publicly. But it will be remembered as the moment when the audience stopped laughing and started watching differently. Because when someone finally says I'm done and means it, the fallout isn't explosive. It's quiet. It's lasting. And it leaves behind a question nobody can ignore. Who benefits when chaos keeps repeating? And who finally decided it wasn't worth the cost anymore? If you made it this far, congratulations, you didn't just watch drama, you survived it. Because this wasn't gossip for fun. This was chaos with layers, seasoning, and long-term consequences. And let's be real, stories like this don't come with clean endings. They come with sequels nobody asked for. So do yourself a favor and smash that like button like it owes you money and keeps dodging your calls. Hit subscribe like you just realized your favorite celebrity has a burner account arguing in the comments. And ring that notification bell like scandals drop here faster than apologies after a bad tweet. Now jump in the comments, because silence is suspicious. Was this inevitable? Was this overdue? Or was this the moment the internet finally stopped confusing chaos with entertainment? Say it with your chest. We're reading everything. And don't get it twisted. This story isn't over. It's just on pause, waiting for the next plot twist, leaked clip, or accidental post that changes everything. Because if there's one thing history has taught us, it's that unfinished business always circles back louder. This channel doesn't chase drama trips and falls into our lap daily. Receipts, breakdowns, patterns exposed, and narratives nobody wants to touch. No filters, no soft landings. Just the raw story the internet pretends not to see. So stay locked in, stay skeptical, and stay entertained. Because the moment you think it's quiet, that's when the next scandal reloads. And remember, when someone says I'm done, sometimes that's not the end of the story. It's the moment the truth finally gets microphone access. Welcome to Vibe Crave, where chaos doesn't knock, it kicks the door in. Chaos doesn't knock, it kicks the door in.